In this lecture, we will launch our very first Linux virtual machine in Azure Cloud. We will start slowly with the basic setup. There are definitely other options available, such as Azure CLI or PowerShell, that we could be using in order to deploy a virtual machine in Azure. But for now, we will continue with Azure Portal. So let's switch over to Azure Portal and get started. First, let's select Create a Resource, and Azure Marketplace is displayed. There are multiple Linux distributions or flavors available in Azure Marketplace, and Ubuntu is just one of them. Let's select Ubuntu Server and continue with the process. First, we will cover the basics, and starting at the top we can see the subscription we are working on. In your case, as you have created a brand new Azure account, you will see here free trial, and for the moment that's the name of your subscription and it's pretty self-explanatory. Right after it, we have something that is called a resource group. We will cover resource groups a bit more later in the course. For now, I would like you to think of a resource group as a container for resources that you deploy in Azure. So a resource group is a collection of resources that share the same lifecycle, permissions, and policy. Currently, we do not have any resource groups created. Let's create one right away, and I will select Create New. Let's provide a name for it, and I will call this AZ-900-RG, so AZ900 resource group. Let's now select OK, and let's define a name for our virtual machine. I will name it Web Server 01. Once we will progress with the lectures in this module, we will configure the virtual machine to act as a web server, and that's why I'm using this name, Web Server 01. Next, we need to select a region. As a best practice, you would select to deploy your virtual machines as close as possible to your customers in order to minimize latency and provide a better user experience. As I am based in Europe, I will search and select the West Europe region. Availability options is next. We have briefly touched on the different VM availability options like availability zone and availability set, so this is where you would select them. Currently, no infrastructure redundancy required option is selected, but if I expand the menu, we can see here availability zone and availability set. And if I select another region, for example UK West, at the moment of this recording, well, as you can see, the availability zone option is grayed out, so it's not available. As I've mentioned in the theoretical lecture, not all regions support availability zones. Alright, I'll select again West Europe as my region and continue with default option, no infrastructure redundancy required for the moment. We can now select the image, the pre-built operating system that will run on the virtual machine. Multiple options are available, both Linux and Windows operating systems. For now, we will continue with Ubuntu Server image. Azure Spot instances refer to pricing in Azure, and we will address pricing and cost management in Module 11. Let's move on to virtual machine sizing. Let's select CL Sizes option and explore the different options together. There are a lot of virtual machine types available, and simply put, the major difference between them is actually the size. Let's take a look at the first category, most used by Azure users. First, we have the VM size, for example DS1, V2, B1S. Then the family type, so what's the use case for these virtual machines, and these are general purpose. And then we continue with specific hardware details like virtual CPU, and we can see that the value is different for virtual machines included in this list. Then memory, so the RAM. Data disks, so how many hard disks or maybe SSDs can be attached to the respective virtual machine. Maximum IOPS, input-output operations per second. What's the size of the temporary disk? Is premium disk type supported, yes or no? And last column, the cost per month for running the VM 24/7 non-stop. Alright, earlier in the course I mentioned that during the free trial we have 750 hours per month in the first year if we are running a B1S virtual machine type. So let's select B1S VM type and click on select at the bottom. And now the size has been updated to standard B1S. Now let's cover authentication type. SSH public key is available as an option, but for now we will use the password option, so please select password here. I will define admin user as my username, And for password, I will enter admin admin 123 exclamation mark. And I will confirm the password again. So admin admin 123 exclamation mark. The rest of the options are good for now. We need SSH port 22 to be allowed, and this is automatically selected by Azure, which is good. So I will select next and move on to disks. The default operating system disk size is 30 GB, and that's really more than enough for what we need. We could select now also the disk type and remember the different options available: standard hard drive or HDD, standard SSD, premium SSD, and ultra disk. This one is not compatible with this VM type, and that's why it doesn't show up. I will leave the default premium SSD option selected and the same for the encryption type. If needed, we could also add a new data disk to our virtual machine, but this is also possible after creating a VM. It is not needed for now, so I will select next and move on to networking. A virtual network in Azure Cloud is your dedicated private network running in the cloud and is similar to your private network running in your data center. Microsoft Azure has already created a virtual network for me, but I would like to personalize it a bit, and I will select Create New. First, I will define a name for it, and I will call it, why not, AZ-900-VNet. I will delete the existing address space and define a new one, for example 10.0.0.0/16, and I will also create a subnet. And a subnet again is a smaller part from the overall IP addressing space of a virtual network. So I will define, for example, subnet 1, and the address range will be 10.0.0.0/24 this time. Great, let's select OK, and I can see that virtual network and subnet have been populated with the new configured values. Because later on we will connect to this specific virtual machine, it's good that it has a public IP address allocated, but I want to customize the name, and I will select Create New. I want to edit the name and have PIP, and this stands for public IP address, at the end. I will select OK, and I can see that the changes are reflected in the portal, and that's great. For now, the rest of the options are fine, so we will address them gradually during this module and the next modules as well. I will select Next at the bottom of the page and Next again to move on to the Advanced tab. I will accept the default here and move on next to Tags, and tags are simply labels that you attach to your resources in Azure Cloud. And as you will see later on, you can filter through your resources by tags, and they are also helpful for billing purposes. We will come back to tags later on in the course. For now, I will add two tags. First one is the tag with the name and the value web server 01. And the second tag is cost center and the value is AZ-900. Alright, we're done. So I will select now Review and Create, and the configuration is now being validated. After a couple of seconds, I see that validation has passed, so I will just select Create. Alright, we have a new notification, and if I select the notification, I can see that currently the deployment is in progress, and it will take a minute or two. Great, so deployment has succeeded, and now you have your server running in the cloud, and it's available in less than 2 minutes. Now, how cool is that? I will click on Go to Resource, and the Web Server 01 overview page is being displayed. So starting from the top, I can see the resource group, what's the status of the virtual machine, and it is running. Where is the VM running? And it is running in my selected region, so this is West Europe. I can see the subscription as well, and in your case would be the free trial subscription, and also I can see the tags applied. Moving on to the right, here is the operating system, the size of the virtual machine, and we are running a B1S virtual machine type. The public IP address is available, and also VNet virtual network, and the subnet we have selected during configuration, subnet 1. Thank you, and I will see you in the next lecture.